Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new series on the channel, the East Lake Animal Education Centre. So, for those of you that remember, a very long time ago, East Lake Animal Education Centre and Dunsville Zoo were on the same map, and we'd taken over ownership of East Lake, and by proving ourselves there, we were allowed to build Dunsville Zoo next door. Something happened with that map, and we weren't able to get back in for a very, very, very long time. It was like 4 updates, something like that. But by that time, I'd started a new Dunsville Zoo. Well, I've managed to get back into the very first iteration of the map, which is actually not mine. This is the Tropical Wings City Zoo by Dan XG, who no longer does YouTube, unfortunately, but he was great when he did YouTube. And I've had trouble getting into this map ever since. Sort of the same issues broke the other one. It turns out, thanks to Frontier, their support was immense in this. It was something to do with the amount of trees that was already there. So I was able to get in by removing all the trees and then removing most of the trees. It wasn't all of them. And then putting other ones back in. So I've gone in and completely changed the insides of the map for what I require, essentially. And that's what you're seeing here. So there's the Animal Education Centre, that's all fenced off. And then everything else is just natural sort of parkland. So the full map is inspired by a few parks nearby where I live. And just sort of things that I would like to see. The actual Animal Education Centre itself is going to be inspired by sort of low-budget zoos, a couple of city zoos, because we don't really have that many city zoos in the UK. And sort of theme park zoos, which sometimes aren't always quite as magnificent as proper zoos, because obviously some of the funding gets spent on roller coasters. So the first couple of episodes we're going to be building with sandbox settings, essentially, so unlimited conservation credits and unlimited cash, just to replace the existing infrastructure, what's already there, which is about to come into view now. It's very dated, it's very Victorian, it's very sort of no longer fit for purpose. And after we've replaced all that you can see now, we will start playing this a bit like franchise, more like challenge mode, really, if we're being honest, because we just work with what Frontier gives us. So there will be cash, there will be conservation credits. We will have to properly take care of the animals, make sure they can't escape, things like that. It should be really interesting. I'm looking forward to it anyway. But it's going to be a sort of modern, environmentally friendly, sort of low-budget-esque animal education centre. And you can see here the things we're going to have to replace. We've got this mossy paving outside. We've got cracked pavement on the inside, what's being botched. We've got cracked planters and cracked brickwork and... so we have one emu to start with, and we also have a small herd of fallow deer, and you can see in the background we also have a llama. We'll get to them in just a second. There we go. We have a few llamas as well, and you've probably seen a couple of wallabies hopping about. We do also have some wallabies as well. Here we go. We have some exhibits. We have the boa constrictor, I think, or the reticulated python, one of the two. The red-eyed tree frog, the giant African tiger land snail, something like that. The giant desert hairy scorpion, when it wants to show. There we go. And we do also have the desert horned viper. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to actually get any footage of that. And we have 4 male peacocks. And that's the animal selection, essentially. That's our starting animals. We will be able to get some more, of course, with conservation credits, but we are jumping into building a new behind-the-scenes area. So we're going to start by placing the foundation, which is going to be this lovely twilight brickwork, I think it is, twilight mason work, something like that. So we just put our foundation in like so. And then when that's in, we're using stained wood and plaster. So if you want to build along with this, the stained wood, you do it every 2 and you leave a gap. And that gap, we're going to put plaster in there. And then in the corner, you just stained wood it up. And then we're doing a little elevated path outside. Not particularly high, just 1 meter. And then we're doing a sort of planter in front of that as well. Because of course we are doing a eco-friendly, modern sort of city zoo. Even though it's low budget doesn't mean it can't be good. And we're doing a slope there as well. So things like, for me, Flamingo Land, that's a theme park and zoo. The sort of starting days of Yorkshire Wildlife Park, when it was very sort of low budget and everything was in square enclosures, and the animals weren't particularly of high conservation value. You know, they had like raccoon dogs and meerkats and goats and cows and things like that. We aren't working with mods in this series. It's going to be completely vanilla, with the exception of the free build mod. So we changed the colour to orange, and then we're just going to put some conservation cladding just to frame it all quite nicely. Like so. And then continuing with what's inspiring me for this, there are a few sort of nearby small animal collections. Suaby Hall and Gardens is one. There's a small animal collection. It's not really a zoo in the city that I live in, but it is by no means a zoo, and believe me when I say that, it's not. So I'm just inspired by small collections for things like this, but that doesn't mean we can't have some impressive animals. So particularly as we work more towards the Flamingo Land inspiration, they have addax and scimitar horned oryx. So those are definitely animals that we can maybe add in. But we will actually be building for some animals that I've never built before. Built for before in Planet Zoo. So that's going to be really interesting. So all I've done here is added the staff facilities, put the path in, and covered the area with concrete. And we're now building a warehouse. It's not going to have anything in it. It's just for realism. Just a little storage warehouse, nothing too grand or fancy. And again, it's just continuing the theming of that twilight brickwork. And this time we're using the corrugated iron wall. And we go for grey rather than orange. Grey is definitely more realistic for a warehouse. And again, just putting the shutters in, making sure it's as flush as possible. because I'm a perfectionist with OCD and life is absolutely unbearable for me, and therefore it should be for you too. So it's my first time doing a video like this. Usually I just do speed builds and sort of speak over the top about the animals and sort of the plans and inspiration and things like that. But we aren't working with animals in this one, and this isn't a speed build where I've just taken the best bits and we're rolling with it. The sort of step-by-steps, if you like. So we put the shutter in. And again, change the colour. Go for a slightly different colour, because it's a shutter. So yeah, more about Eastlake. So it's going to be probably more realistic than Dunswell Zoo, in the sense that there's going to be sort of backstage buildings, gutters are going to be a thing. It's just going to adhere more to the realities, whereas Dunswell Zoo, we sort of say it's realistic, but it is still within Planet Zoo, and that gives us a little bit of wiggle room. So if you think of things like Caesar Creates, his Desert Adventure Zoo, and Elm Hill City Zoo, we're talking that sort of realism is going to be going into this. The level of detail, stuff like that. But I'm going to try to keep these episodes at about 15 to 20 minutes. Dunswell Zoo's episodes tend to be longer because they're usually bigger builds and I get to talk about the animals more, and it's a speed build. So this is the sort of more or less finished backstage area now, and it's now time to completely demolish this and build a new entrance, which is exactly what we're about to do. So the trees I remove some and others I repurpose, because that's what would happen in reality. So these ones are going in these planters, which separates the guest path from the backstage staff access. And then we go ahead and build the entrance. So the entrance was not easy to build at all. I definitely underestimated how complex this would be, but I think I managed to achieve something that was pretty good. And the entrance for the Eastlake Animal Education Centre is based on, I think it's Dartmoor Zoo's entrance. Let me just have a quick look on my Instagram. You can find me on Instagram at JW_YT. Shameless Instagram plug there. And I also have my wildlife photography page as well, which is at JW_wildlife photography. It's either Dartmoor or Exmoor. There's definitely a more involved. None of them. It was Dudley. It's inspired by the entrance of Dudley Zoo. It's got this really nice sort of brickwork and wavy roof. We've taken the wavy roof, but instead of having brickwork, we've gone for this sort of stone, dry wall. I can't remember what it's called now. Dry stone wall, something like that. I just like the texture of it a bit better. It's a bit more classical. It's a bit darker. It's more rustic as well. I like that. So we'll go ahead and pop our new entrances in. So whereas before we had 3 entrances, we've now got 5 on this one, because of course it is an upgraded facility. No, we've got 4, sorry, not 5, I can't count. So I'm just deleting the old path out here. I do have Hexabit's Path Plus mod installed at this point. I haven't yet used it. when this eventually goes up on the Steam Workshop, if you don't have that mod, don't worry about it. I'll make sure to replace all the paths with vanilla paths anyway. But I haven't used it yet, I don't think. Not unless that path under the entrance is part of that mod. Anyway, so the wavy roof was quite difficult. It goes through 2 iterations, which I do show in this video. And it's sort of in 2 segments, and one's slightly higher than the other. So this is the first iteration, which just looks like a wave, essentially, a wiggly wave. Putting the supports in there, of course. But I don't like how uniform it looks in terms of the roof. So instead of doing 1 of each, I try doing 2 of each. And it gives a much more wavy shape, and that's definitely more akin to what I was going for. So I completely replaced both roofs, which has already happened. And I now change this to white, because it's very modern, it's very sleek, and it looks new, which is what it's meant to be. So we change everything to white for the colour selectors there. And then we've got the sign. So I've used plywood, is it plywood? Chipboard. I've used that, and of course we've put the sign in there, because that's the thinnest panel piece we've got, and that's the Eastlake Animal Education Centre. So now we're going to work on the cafe. So you may remember from the footage earlier that we had a Street Fox coffee, a Bernie's Bakes, and a Missy Good. And this building is going to replace those 3 separate shops into one convenient cafe. So we're using the conservation blueprint that Frontier make as a sort of starting point, and then we're going to build off from that. And you can see that's happening already. And we'll just go ahead and copy the cladding. And then it frames itself quite nicely. There are some gaps here and there, and it is slightly off kilter. Don't worry, I noticed that and correct it. We also have, I think it was 2 toilets to replace. We actually had an extra toilet, so we've got 1 toilet for the cafe, and then we've got 2 toilets just for general use. So it's double walled, and here's the counter, what's going in. There goes the Street Fox coffee counter. So that's the finished cafe. I had to cut a lot out of that. It was quite difficult getting everything to work and finding designs that fit right. But you can see there's seats and stuff in there now, and bins. Just putting the pathing in, that was a nightmare. We have to raise the building a little bit, but also make sure that it's still sort of accessible and it's not unrealistic. We have a nice little ramp there. I think that's really accessible. It's really nice. And ignore that extra 1 meter piece. I do get rid of that. But I didn't want people to be able to walk right up to the windows of the cafe, so we're putting a nice sort of decorative planter in, just to sort of spruce the area up and provide a bit of distance between people sitting to enjoy something to eat and drink, and sort of people rushing to get in and out of the zoo. Well, it's not a zoo, it's an animal education centre, but you know what I mean. So I've gone for this 2 wide planter. So it's 8 meters in total, the planter, and 2 4-meter pieces. It's just a nice bit of privacy, a nice bit of distance, but also it gives us a good opportunity to include some plants there to encourage native wildlife, so pollinators and birds and things like that. So here, making a custom door, because I don't make life easy for myself. And it's 2 of these 4 by 2 meter panels then we recolour the handles so they're nice and sleek. I wanted to keep the pattern, so I didn't go fully black. And now here we're replacing the information desks, which were before the entrance of the old Animal Education Centre. So we've got 2. So we put 2. And you can see the building has actually changed a little bit. We've got a rounded corner there. And then we go ahead and put the information shops in. I've gone for the shops rather than the counters so that I don't have to build a background. And then this space behind here, we don't let it go to waste. We actually put a staff room in there. Just so staff don't have to walk as far and stuff like that. So we put our signage up. It's the information desk. There's 2 of them. And then next to that we put the toilets in. The toilets went through a couple of different iterations. I eventually found a design that I liked enough to stick with. Oh, the cladding here was really weird. So I was using the curved cladding, but it wasn't like snapping to the curb, like the curve rather. So I had to like move it back in. So that's after I've moved it once, and now I'm going to move it again. And then it's similar to what I wanted in the first place. But yeah, it was just so weird. It wouldn't snap. I use a lot of conservation pieces on the entrance. I think it's one of my favourite build packs, probably ever. We changed the colours, don't worry. It doesn't look very good at the minute, but we changed the colours. So I'm just framing the information area. And there we go. And now we change the colours. Yeah, nice sort of rich chocolatey colour. Looks really good. And then the toilets. So this is the design I settled on for the toilets. As I said, it went through a few different design iterations, but this was the one what I sort of settled on. It was the simplest, I think, of not necessarily all of them, but it was the simplest one I could work with at this moment in time. And it's just 2 toilet blocks with a wall in the middle. There we go. And I am going to put some doors over the toilets. Hopefully the guests should still be able to access them. We shall see what happens there. And then just move the sign. I move it down, I end up moving it back up because we put a planter under there. So this is the finished entrance area for now. We have got some other shops to put in and some other bits and bobs here and there, but that's more or less it for now. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Next time we will be continuing the entrance area. We'll be doing some fountains and some planters and some food and drink shops and some merchandise shops as well, and putting down sort of the rudimentary animal enclosures. I'll explain how they work in that next episode, because each habitat's going to have like 3 different versions. That's how I've planned it, but it'll make sense when I explain it, do not worry. So thank you very much for watching. Please let me know what you think so far, and I shall see you all next time for the East Lake Animal Education Centre. Until then, my friends, bye bye for now.